and from there on, there was this heightened tension. I mean, George Bush himself said there's a clash of civilization. Do you think after 9/11 things changed and we have this new world order?
Alhamdulillah, sallallahu I would say that for people who were not Muslim, the 11th of September 2001 attacks for rank and file people who were not Muslims was a game changer. George Bush's statement regarding Samuel Huntington's word clash of civilizations came before and was used by Zbigniew Brzezinski during the time where they were attempting to give Russia a bloody nose in Afghanistan during the war. And they did use the Mujahideen, or what they were calling freedom fighters at the time, by giving them massive amounts of firepower and weapons to defeat the Russian Empire and to bring them to their knees, which worked. But after that, they realized that the Mujahideen weren't going away because now they'd been given weaponry, and then there began to be fighting within the Mujahideen. Now, what I can say is, with regards to the 11th of September 2001 attacks, I just want to make a quick statement. It has often been mentioned that the 11th of September 2001 attacks were a game changer, and that Muslims, because of what had happened, have failed to accurately address the problems that occurred on that day, whether it's the death of the people, whether it's the cataclysmic state of those events. They failed to do so. Let me start by saying that this is not true, because I can mention scholars like Imam Muhammad Sa'id Ramadan al-Bulti, Muhammad Abdul Rahim al-Hanbali, and a host of others that have mentioned that this is not acceptable. The problem has been is that their words have been in Arabic. The second problem has been that with what has happened, this was an international situation that occurred. It was a global situation that occurred. Now, in the past, the 48 Muslim countries that we see today were provinces, part of a larger Muslim empire that was ruled over by a central government and had a panel of scholars in place that ruled. When that was removed in 1919, they removed the judicial system. By removing that, you remove the safeguards that made it possible to prosecute people that do international criminal crimes like this, because you can't prosecute those people. Where would he be prosecuted? Not in Egypt, not in Syria, because he's not from those places. But by having a universal recognized central judicial system in place, he could have been prosecuted. But by removing that in 1919, there was no way to satisfactorily prosecute him. That's why the way that things are, we're still reeling from the 1919 colonialist exercises, and we're still trying to gather together our resources. We have people among our ranks, Muslim theologians, that have been in jail since Saddam was brought to power, that were told that they should be in there. And because of this, it's escalated some things. So
people who are now being dubbed as fundamental Islam or fundamental Islamists, or as they're also known as Al Qaeda, etc.
Yes.
Do you see those people as being Islamic in their fundamentalism?
Well, it has to be kept in mind. We simply cannot say that the people that are doing these acts have just nothing to do with Islam whatsoever. They have big bushy beards, they have big hats, they fast in Ramadan like I do, they pray 5 times a day like I do. We simply can't say they're not Muslim. Well, they clearly are, because they're fasting and doing all the other things. Now, what they have done from a purely legal framework within the revealed law of the Muslims, was it correct? No. So what are we going to do about these people? Well, currently, what Muslims can do about them is zilch, because we have no legal system to prosecute them. And so it's a problem by people continuing to say, well, what are Muslims going to do about these people? We have no legal system since 1919 to prosecute these people. Allow us to rebuild our legal system, and we can begin to prosecute some of the people amongst our ranks. Similarly, if I'd come into the United Kingdom and removed the entire legal structure for Wales, the United Kingdom, Scotland. And then the people that came out of that, some of whom were vigilantes, did things. And I said, well, why haven't the people of the United Kingdom done anything? Well, they can't do anything because they have no legal system. I've removed it. And so that doesn't absolve Muslims from condemning it or what have you, but it's certainly a major stumbling block for actually prosecuting these people.
Well, so the Americans have gone ahead and developed Guantanamo Bay.
Well, they've had to, because there's nowhere else.
So you agree with Guantanamo Bay?
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that for the following reason. If you are going to put people in a situation in which they are in limbo, these people are in limbo. And the problem is within them there are some people who were picked up not just off of battlefields, but people who were picked up who were working for orphanages. People, it was really a general sweep in which, and it's something that's still happening now, in which people are being said, these people are fundamentalist, or these people must be linked to Al-Qaeda. So you will have generally valid resistance groups within the Muslims in places like Mindanao, where they have been told and been persecuted consistently, they are not fundamentalists. The people of Mindanao just want to be able to go outside without having their head shot off. They want to be able to go to masjid on Friday without disappearing 2 days later. They don't want anything political, just Mindanao? Religious. Mindanao is in the Philippines, right? So they're not asking for anything, but they've been painted as Al-Qaeda. The Chechens, who have been resisting Russia for over 200 years. They don't believe that they're Russian. They've never accepted they're Russian, but they have consistently been fought, and now they've been classed as Al-Qaeda. What jetliners have they flown into any buildings?
So maybe the question there, Sheikh, is not so much are the religions at war, but is politics causing the religions to be at war?
That is some of it. That is, politics is some of it. We can't deny that there is some religious sentiment, because it couldn't have been possible for people to do some of the things and then quote certain verses from the Quran or certain ahadith and certain things like that without that religious sentiment being there. So there is a religious sentiment, but there also a political sentiment, because by certain beliefs that you hold, you're going to commit or do certain actions. Now, if you have a worldview that is the worldview of a Muslim, and you do certain actions, those actions will reflect your worldview. And if you're a Muslim that's going to do criminal actions, you will justify those criminal actions by Islam based upon, because that's the fact that that's the understanding that you hold. So we have both aspects of it. There's a religious understanding and there is a political understanding. And both of them have to be tackled. Let me just mention one last thing. People were very pleased when I was here, and they were grinning because they were happy that something was finally going to come about regarding prosecution of some of the high-level detainees in Guantanamo Bay. They said, all right, finally, they're going to go into the U.S. prison system, and then things will be sorted. I was angry. Here's why. At Guantanamo Bay, they are safer there than they are in the U.S. prison system. The U.S. prison system has been an Amnesty International, Benevolence International. They have not allowed any of those major humanitarian organizations into the U.S. prison system. The WCW, which has the highest number in California of female inmates on the planet, has male guards and males that do strip searches, high-level guards. It takes an 8-hour trip to get there from any city outside of the Los Angeles area to get to the WCW where women are held. It's better for them, it's not good, but it's better for them to be there where at least lawyers can keep a look at them and international observers can come in and look at them than going into the U.S. prison system where we don't know whether they'll get their mail. The FDC, which is in Colorado, is 15 feet under the ground where you have to lift a trap door to get inside. No. They're better there where at least you can fly down and see them and say they're still alive. We wouldn't have known about the suicide cases or the waterboarding if they'd been in U.S. prison systems, because it just would have been done. They would have died. They would have been buried quickly. So it's one of the things that you're in a catch-22 with the American prison system, which is it really needs investigating, and Guantanamo Bay, which is open. It's bad, but it's open.
Okay. Yeah, let me ask a question, actually.
Yes, Father, and then we'll get Pitman to come in.
I want to ask my brother here a question. Just like we took on the Catholic Church on the issue of the abuse, I think at a certain point we need to take on Islam on the issue of violence. Whether to find out whether there is a compatibility between the way most Islamic people see things and the place of violence there. You're going to answer that. The use of violence in trying to address a cause is one issue, but the other issue, which is a little bit worrying, is the fact that you said since 1919 the legal systems in which we are supposed to use in order to prosecute these people and bring them to book has been removed. And that is a little bit worrying in the sense that, does it mean that Islam doesn't look forward to putting his house in order by as much as possible say, listen, these radicals, these violent people do not represent us in any way at all just like the Catholic Church said, this person abusing children doesn't represent us, so we're going to deal with it. So isn't it possible for Islam to say, no, these people who are violent in thought, violent in action, violent in their response to issues, well, Islam means peace, shalom means peace. But then the method of addressing issues, both internally and, like you said, externally, has become violent. What do you say about that?
Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. The first aspect has to do with Islam and violence and the condemnation of violence. I mentioned before that our theologians, like Imams Wahab al-Zuhaili, Muhammad Sa'id al-Mutanabulti, Muhammad Abdul Rahim al-Hanbali, Ismail ibn Badran, Ahmed al-Shami, Abdullah bin Muhammad al-Khulafi, Abdullah ibn Jibreen, and a host of others have been very clear and adamant with regard to this issue, that it is not permissible to attempt to force people to become Muslim or to carry out acts in which non-combatants are going to be murdered or mowed down or cut or killed or what have you. The problem with this is some of the speeches of other people have been translated into English, but the words of these theologians and these scholars, which came out on the very day of the 11th of September 2001, were not translated. And that is a problem. That has to do with an English-speaking media being selective in what they translate. I've got some 100 quotes I can bring, but it wouldn't matter because they're not in English, and the English-speaking media has yet to address them. As far as the legal system of the Muslims and the Muslims putting their house in order, this goes back with something that I mentioned before, that we have to stop classing or people within the media structure have to stop classing every single resistance movement of the Muslims to try to redress, to try to get a working legal system back in place, to try to get a structure in place in 48 countries throughout the world that have civil war because there's a battle between secularist governments that are funded and the people that don't want them there. People have to stop classifying the movements that are within them as all being Al-Qaeda, because the Chechens are not, the Tajiks are not, the Afghanis are not, the Laotians are not, the Cambodian and Vietnamese Muslims that have been persecuted since 1471 AD, they're not. They simply want to have a legal structure in place where they can distribute charity, their charitable contributions. They can distribute their money so that they have a social care system. They need these things just like anyone else in the United States. If you divided up the 50 states and said, we're going to take away your legal structure, they need legal structure. And they're attempting to address that. But if our theologians that are actually calling for this, that are not terroristic, keep getting put in jail by people who want secular governments like in Egypt or Algeria to stay in place, then this can't get fixed. As for the violence that is among some of the Muslims, there are 6,236 verses in the Quran. 80 of them deal with societal issues. If you remove the verses that are repeats or clarification, that's 40. Out of those 40 verses, if you remove the ones on society and deal with just warfare, those are 10. And if you remove the repeats that are explanatory, they are 5. All of those verses occurring in Surah At-Tawbah and Surah Al-Anfal. So 5 out of 6,236 leaves 6,231. So I hardly think that we would necessarily look at Islam itself as a problem when we're talking about the Quran. Rather, we have to look at, we need a proper system in place to prosecute our criminals, and people that are here have to stop doing so.
But let me just put this then to Father Ephraim and to the bishop as well, and perhaps bring in Pitman.